Morning, everyone. We're here on Connect and Collaborate, and today's topic is Opportunity Youth. I am your host, Rocio Perez, with Global Minded Radio. We have three amazing guests. We have Lorena Zimmerman.
Just Zimmer.
Zimmer, who is the Director of Talent Pipeline with the Denver Metro Chamber of Commerce and the lead Denver Opportunity Youth Initiative. We also have Tara Smith in the State 2 Generation Program Coordinator with the Colorado Department of Governor. You're with
the
Governor
Governor's
Hipken?
office, yeah.
Wonderful. Governor Hipken-Looper. And you're coordinating efforts to advance the adoption of Gen 2 or Gen 2 approaches across the state government and non-governmental partners. And we also have another wonderful guest, Israel. Tell us something about yourself quickly.
My name is Israel. I work for the Denver Chambers of Commerce, Opportunity Youth Engagement. Went through the program myself.
Wonderful. Well, today we will be discussing such a hot topic as Opportunity Youth. And before that, we'll touch on the topic of the conference, what Global Minded is. Global Minded exists to close the equity gap and help individuals through employment, education, and opportunities. Do a lot of mentoring and conferences and internships and so forth. And we will be hosting our conference from June 9th through the 11th. Amazing opportunity to talk about early childhood education, K-12 education, higher education, STEM, technology, in addition to having other pre-conferences on Opportunity Youth, learning employment engagement solutions, and 2-gen strategies. We'll also be talking about promising practices for first-gen college programs, an entrepreneurial mindset in the classroom and schools, which I believe is so important that everybody comes from that perspective. And looking at the human-centered coaching for faculty and staff, that whole facilitating, collaborating, and co-creating with students to be accountable, employable, and promotable. We'll be talking about rural futures, reinventing resilience economics through diverse education pipeline, and from the United Nations, SDG to STEM projects engineering a better world, including the experience in the digital citizenship through augmentation reality, SDG, media literacy, and more, and ensuring that college readiness for first-generation students, practical workshops for technology solutions at scale, in addition to bridging the gap between the ability and opportunity for ability status youth, improving accessibility in the classroom and pipelines in STEM careers, as well as design equity. What a hot topic. Solving the wicked social problems with inclusive design solutions. And this you get to hear all about at the conference. We'll have an amazing opening dinner with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. We'll have opportunities to have private events, public events. Get engaged. Lead the conversation. Be part of the conversation, and you will be super excited that you did so. With today's guest, we're going to go ahead and get started and talk a little bit about Lorena. Tell us a little bit about your work and why the Chamber, what is the Chamber doing as it relates to Opportunity Youth right now?
The Denver Opportunity Youth Initiative started at the Chamber almost 3 years ago now, and we are foundation funded. We are one of 24 sites across the country funded by the Aspen Institute initially, so we're part of a larger cohort. There's a huge movement across the country. But what it looks like in Denver is that we're looking at over 9,000 youth just in city and county of Denver. That's 32,000 in the metro area and probably closer to 65,000 statewide. Young adults 16 to 24 that are not engaged in school or work. And we see this as a pool of young people that we can get back into the pipeline to meet some of the demands of the economy. For example, if we're looking at the unemployment rate, which is hovering at around 3%, as well as 75% of our jobs needing a post-secondary certificate and only 54% of Coloradans having one, we need to get all hands on deck. And that means this population of young adults, how can we get them back? We do many different strategies for re-engagement. So that kind of explains why the Chamber is involved. It is an economic imperative to make sure everybody, all Coloradans are contributing and able to work in really good jobs.
And speaking of those gifts, because every generation, every individual brings a gift into the workplace. What are some of the greatest gifts that you see that Opportunity Youth bring to the table for corporations and organizations?
Definitely the diversity aspect. 75% of our young people that are of color. So we're helping them get into the workforce ready and prepared with the right skills. And that means a more diverse workforce for our employers that matches the population of Colorado.
And that's wonderful. I know as we're leading into this next generation and leading the country forward, it's so important to have that diversity of talent as well as diversity of thought process as individuals can tap into their fullest potential. They can help companies lead into their own futures.
Yeah, national research has shown that if you invest the time as a company or an employer in the young person, whether it be providing training or internships, they're more likely to stay for a longer period of time than the rest of the millennial population coming out of colleges, etc. as well.
And what a wonderful thing when you provide the proper support, how individuals can not only just contribute to your company in that moment, it could be a lifetime of opportunities for that company as individuals contribute.
That's true win-wins.
It is a true win-win, Tara. And speaking of that, tell us a little bit about the Gen 2 and why it's paired with Opportunity Youth for this show.
Yeah, so I think when you look at some of the great things that GlobalMindED has done, what they're going to be doing with this conference and past conferences, and really their mission, when you're talking about creating a strong pipeline between education and workforce opportunities, you hear a lot about first-generation students, which is really this reference to students who are the first in their family to go to college. And when we're talking about two-generation, it's a similar term, but it's a little bit different concept. So we're excited to be bringing that to the GlobalMindED table this year as part of our pre-conference workshop session. So when we're talking about two-generation or 2-gen, is sort of the buzzy acronym that you'll hear out there these days. What it is, it's really an approach to breaking the cycle of intergenerational poverty that we see. So it sort of dates back to Johnson and the war on poverty. We know that unfortunately poverty seems to be one of those things that's handed down generationally. So you have family members that are constantly struggling, working 2 or 3 jobs that just can't break beyond that gap and really get on the road to economic stability and security. So 2Gen approaches this problem by saying, hey, if we're really going to help people get out of that cycle of poverty, the best way to do that is to look at children and their parents together. So it's this idea we know from research that those outcomes are inextricably intertwined. So that a parent's education level, that their income, that their health, all is going to have a huge impact on a child's trajectory in life. Similarly, we know that when a child is doing well, that has a very motivating influence on parents. So 2Gen is really all about how can we sort of harness, maximize, and foster that mutual motivation so that we're looking at the entire family and lifting the entire family out of poverty and providing them with these great opportunities and some of these innovations that GlobalMindED is coming up to.
You're speaking to my heart, and as it relates to that, because I truly believe as individuals that we lead the conversation, that we are involved in it's a whole co-creative experience between children and family and community, that it is not the child, that it is not the parent, that it is everyone together. Coming together makes us stronger. Lorena takes me by the hand, and I take Lorena by the hand, and we co-create something that can be far more amazing than what we would do it individually, and that impact is much more sustainable in the long run.
Right. I mean, at its core level, it's a very intuitive concept. The problem and why 2Generation is sort of considered a little bit revolutionary is that's not the way systems have been set up. Whether that's government, whether that's nonprofits, you have an organization that's very focused on child issues, so you have a child welfare department. On the other side, you have temporary assistance for needing families, cash benefits, which are very focused on adults. So you have programs and different services that are very siloed that treat an individual client as an individual client and not part of a family. So in the governor's office and what we're trying to do within state government, both within the different state agencies, but also reaching out to business, to nonprofit, to some of these key other partners that we need. How do we start coordinating services better across those silos so that we are considering the entire family as a unit, and that we're making sure as we're providing services for the child, are we considering the context that they're in? Are we considering the parent needs, which are going to help the person, my child, achieve their goals? Similarly with the parent, if I'm trying to get them involved in a great education and training opportunity or a great workforce opportunity. If they don't have access to childcare, I can have the best program in the world, but they're not going to be able to access it. So it's bringing that generational lens to the way that we're structuring services, in some cases programs, but really getting back to a more systems level. How do we create policies and overall organized government so that it's functioning better? We're making Colorado the healthiest place to live, the best place to raise a family, but we're also making government a lot more efficient in the process and increasing our effectiveness.
What a wonderful opportunity for organizations to come together and rethink. Is what we're doing working for the population that we're serving? If it's not, let's take another look. How can we serve them? How can we and incorporate all these wonderful stakeholders that are being impacted by our decisions and the systems that we create for them?
Yeah.
Wonderful.
I think one of the things, just the last comment, and then certainly we'll get to you, Israel. I think one of the things we're excited about when we're looking at 2Gen and Opportunity Youth, it's not a completely intuitive connection between these two. In a lot of cases, someone who's disconnected from work and school that sort of falls into this category of 16 to 24-year-olds, often cases doesn't have a strong family support. And it could be, sort of one of the reasons they've disconnected maybe is because they haven't had that type of support around them. But what we're looking at as a creative way is that this type of lens can inform this work. And so I think a couple of key connections. In some cases, we know that Opportunity Youth are parents themselves. In other cases, we know that they may have a role in the family looking after other family members. And I know, Israel, you have probably some experience there that you can share where they're now a primary caregiver for their younger siblings or looking after an adult. So as we're looking at and pursuing some of these engagement strategies, how do we get them hooked back into school opportunities? How do we get them into hook them into workforce opportunities? Are we thinking about them within the family context and building that into our programming? I think a second key way, 2Gen is also holistic. So I think if you think of one word with 2Gen, it's really about families. Second key word would be this idea of wraparound services. So education is a huge component of this, having access to high quality early education through K through 12 and into post-secondary education. Workforce opportunities are another key component. Do people have access to high-wage jobs through some innovative pathways, so through things like internships, which is another great example of we have that we'll hear a little bit more about, through apprenticeships, through some of these programs that aren't the cookie cutter, I went to high school, I got a 4-year college degree, sort of that traditional pipeline. How are we engaging some of these youth who have this diversity, who have these talents, who are probably better time managers than most of us, understanding bus schedules and the balancing all the demands how do I get to this office for services before it closes at 5? I mean, these are people with incredible skills.
And
they just don't necessarily fit.
Skills?
Right. So I think looking at education, at workforce, health is another big component of a 2Gen model. So we understand, again, if I'm not healthy, if my family is not healthy, we're not going to be able to, all of these wheels have to work together to be able to support someone and really get them on that path to economic security. So when you're thinking about a population that is disconnected from school, disconnected from workforce, some of those traditional avenues for outreach aren't necessarily there for these populations. So how can we use some of those other areas where they're articulating with our system, like healthcare? When I go in for a visit with my doc, you see a lot of places where they're starting to address some of the social determinants of health within a clinical setting. So they're screening for things like housing, food security. And is there a way that we can start incorporating, and we're connecting the clinic with other resources in the community, so that could become a way to engage with this population, not just around a health issue, but to really get them connected with the workforce and education, which we know in the scope of things, when you have those things, when you have a good paying job, you have access to health insurance, that in turn helps reinforce your health. And then I think a final way that 2Gen is really can help contribute to this conversation, really one of the fundamental principles of that is incorporating family voice. So very much foregrounding those that we're trying to serve as a critical part of the conversation. It's not just a bunch of government policy wonks, dreaming up our own ideas in our own institutions. So really what we're trying to do with this pre-conference session is incorporate and have youth help lead and drive that conversation. And so we're really excited to have Israel here to talk about some of his experiences. A little later on in the program, we'll have another youth advocate. So really making sure that they are part of the solution as we're trying to come up with innovative ways ways that we can really tap into this potential and get to that win-win situation that Lorena was outlining. So.
And that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. I think as an individual, I was that opportunity youth at one point in my life, and I know what the struggle is and what life looks like. I was pregnant at 14, mom by 15, middle school dropout, and those demands on life and reality and what life looked like. It wasn't just me moving on with life. I still had responsibilities to my family. There were still things that, even though I didn't live within the family, there was taking mom to the doctor and taking care of certain things that are a priority. Let's be realistic. Growing up, that's what it looked like. Being 6 years old and having to take care of mom and moving forward. One of the things that I do definitely agree with everything you've said. One of the things that I find super important is how do we break that cycle? And for me, the cycle's always, it's forever broken. There is no mold for the cycle that used to be in my family, as I have 2 nieces that are in college. I have another one that's heading on. My son is in college. Everybody is moved above and beyond, and my family will never be the same, right? And it took one person to make it out. And speaking of that one person, Israel, you're a remarkable young man. Tell us about your experience. You've gone through the program that Lorena and the Chamber have designed. What has been your experience?
So it's crazy how you're saying about finding that person that believes in you. That's exactly what Opportunity Youth did for me at a point where I didn't know what my next steps or my next plans in life were. Opportunity Youth came through and gave me an internship at the Chambers. My first internship was event planning, and from that experience, like, I learned so much about the world and just like what I was interested in, and found out that it was like more than I was doing before, because before that I was doing construction with my uncle, which wasn't really promising. It was, even at that, it was under the table, so it was never really like a career path or really had anything planned out. And then even some of my friends were doing the same thing. So once I got into this internship and was able to be in a position of, like, I would say professionalism and actually be in the business world, it changed my whole view of what I wanted to do career-wise.
Speaking of that vision, it's so important right now. You're in a place that's supportive. You're being demonstrated the amazing things that you have to offer as well as intake and information. How has your vision shifted? Tell me, where are you going now as a result of this? What's possible?
I would say how you said, changing that scope for my family and breaking that cycle and taking my friends and opening them up to internships and opportunities. Finding when my little sister and little brother become old enough for them to take those opportunities and get those internships for them as well, to be that person that's able to make that change.
Mm-hmm. Now, I know as an individual, sometimes it's a little scary, right? You're coming in, it's uncharted territory. Nobody has ever talked, I'm sure, in my family, nobody ever talked about internships. To me, that was a very foreign concept. College was a foreign concept. Life was a foreign concept, right? And now you come in as an individual. The Chamber takes you under its wings and helps mold you and bring all of this amazing untapped talent within you, and it creates your future opportunities. How does that feel as an individual who's been through this process?
I would say it's a roller coaster, because like even in the beginning of my internship, a lot of my friends didn't understand it. They're like, "Yo, why are you doing that? You could make more money over here."
I'm sure it's a very exciting roller coaster until you get to the end and your hands are up in the air and you said, "I did it."
I think the thing that like pushed me was once I got hired on with the Chambers, and it was like, whoa, like now I'm in a position to really start molding my craft, really start molding those skills. Like, I did not know how to use Microsoft before, and now I'm pretty decent, not the best, but in a better position than I was like a year ago, learning those office skills.
And so much to contribute, right,
Mm-hmm.
Lorena?
Yeah.
When we speak of the contribution.
The contribution that Israel brings to the table. I mean, like you talked about policy wonks, I cannot at my age assume that I can know how to outreach to 16 to 24-year-olds, and that's a lot of the work that Israel does. And he's actually one of our top referral sources to one of our career navigators too, trying to get other kids and other friends of his kind of in the same situation to that next step, and that's where we offer help and guidance as well as other opportunities as well. So yeah, there's a lot that Israel does and brings to the table, which is really exciting to make our initiative bigger, bolder, better.
And what a great thing. I know that as an individual, I get so much fulfillment from helping individuals and knowing
You
that
can
you're
take on an intern.
I can take on an intern. Wow, look at that. I even have I have a new intern.
World problems already.
Oh, beautiful. Like, we are people of action in this moment. Tell us, Tara, what else is important? Like, if somebody was to come to you, they're asking the frequently asked questions over and over again. What should they be asking about Gen 2 and Opportunity Youth?
Sure. I mean, I think it represents an exciting, and particularly with GlobalMindED, it represents an exciting opportunity to bring the diversity of perspectives and actors that we know will need to contribute to the system. So government alone is not going to have a solution. Great programs like the Chamber, 9 to 25 organizations, any one individual force is probably not going to be able to create the kind of momentum that we need. But when we get all of these great minds from all of these great different sectors, talking about this issue, thinking about it holistically, what kinds of support do people need in what areas of their lives? If we're just talking about purely education or workforce, we're missing this whole other life that happens that's impacting my ability to be successful. So are we bringing those individuals to the table, and then are we actually thinking across generations? So not just necessarily lifespan, so how are we keeping people engaged, birth to 5, how are we keeping them engaged in, K through 12? Certainly there's that component of looking across the pipeline, but are we thinking generally about how that pipeline looks and what that, how people experience that, not just as an individual, but as part of a family? So I think bringing sort of the idea of getting all these great minds together to think about how we can remove some of these barriers. I mean, you guys have both talked about the challenges of trying to step up and seize these opportunities. And I think from the chair where I sit, I see a lot of great people that are trying to come up with solutions. And there are some, and we would always love more resources. I'm not saying we have all the resources to solve all the problems, but how can we be thinking more effectively about removing those barriers? Both that, so what are some of those immediate solutions, whether that's, a program requirement or, in some of these, it's not huge barriers, but how do we hear your story, understand your stories, find out what your pain points are, what made it hard, and then what can we do collectively as a community? And I think government has a great role to play in that, in terms of being a coordinator and being able to, take some of those, start removing some of those barriers in a systemic way.
And it sounds like being a great business person, understanding your customer, their needs, and getting the feedback from your customer and being able to see it in real time. How rewarding. Lorena, before we move on to the next segment, what are your last tidbits? Because you'll be leaving us in this segment. What are your words to the general public right now that's listening?
I think it's time for everyone. When we say all hands on deck, it means, yes, we need to get these young people trained and skilled into the jobs that we need, but we also need the business community to be able or be ready to think about skill-based hiring, thinking about investing in internships or apprenticeship type models within their sectors, because it's not just for the construction industry that apprenticeships are for. We see apprenticeships for project management, for social media, for other things as well. And I think just adding to what Tara was talking about for our pre-conference, I mean, I think this is an opportunity to think with innovative programs, but also what can technology bring to the table? What better marketing can we do? What, because it's not just about what we make available, but how we get people there.
Wonderful. And that's such a fantastic opportunity. We're here on Connect and Collaborate, leading the conversation on Opportunity Youth. We had wonderful guests, Israel, we have Tara and Lorena from the Chamber of Commerce. We will be right back with you on our second segment and invite our next guest, Pearl and Catherine, that will be joining us along with Israel. We look forward to being back.